Pond design, construction and preparation can be a challenging task, as there are various aspects to successful construction. There are a couple of key issues to focus on. When designing the pond, the first things to focus on will be the size of the pond and the location. The size you want is a very major decision. You will need to balance how much space you can use and how much is available. Our small ponds are about 11 meters by 22 meters and are up to around 3.5 meters deep. In these ponds, it's around 400 cubic meters of water. The location decision is equally as important as the size of your pond. For an ideal location for your pond, you will need to factor in several decisions. Mainly, the lay of the land. Is there a slope? If there is, you should put the pond at the bottom so more rainwater can be collected. If there's not enough rain to fill the pond, then the pond should be constructed close to a potential water source so you can fill if needed by pumping. Once you have found the ideal location and you have decided how big you want your pond to be, the design and construction phase will start. The first big choice is if you use a pond liner or clay. If your soil has a lot of clay, or you have a cheap clay source nearby, then you can use clay to water seal your pond. Once you have finished digging and compacted the soil, add the clay with a layer of around 30 centimeters. The clay will need to be slightly wet, and you should also compact it once it is in the pond. The sides will also need clay, but not as much as the bottom. If you use a clay pond, it can never be completely dry again, or the clay will crack and water will be able to run out. Furthermore, filling will need to be faster with the clay, so a secure water source and good pumps will also be necessary. Pond liner is usually HDPE plastic material that covers the bottom of your pond and the sides of your pond. It seals the pond and makes it waterproof so no water is lost through the ground. If you do not have a high clay content in your soil, or there's no clay nearby to seal the bottom and sides of your pond, then a pond liner will be necessary. The pond liner is UV stable and can last from 10 to 20 years if handled correctly. Additionally, it enables a steeper wall slope and stops erosion. Usually, it'll also make it easier to harvest the fish out of the pond due to the uniformity of the pond's floor and walls. There are various thicknesses of pond liner ranging from 0.2 mm to 3 mm thickness. The very thin liners are quite cheap and easy to install. However, you'll probably need an additional geotextile beneath the liner to protect the pond liner from rock damage and root damage, as thin liners can tear quite easily. Thick liners at around 2 to 3 mm are expensive and difficult to install due to the weight and stiffness, but these will usually not need an additional geotextile layer because they are very tough. Although pond liners are quite strong, they can be damaged quite easily by sharp objects like rocks or sticks, so make sure the pond is cleared of these objects before installation. Furthermore, once the pond line is installed and there are damages, it'll be almost impossible to fix without the right equipment. So be careful around your pond with sharp objects. Fire or very hot objects can also damage the pond liner quickly. Once you have decided if you're using a pond liner or not, the design and construction of your pond can start. The main design difference is the slope of the pond walls. If you're not using a liner, then the slope or angle of your pond will need to be larger, meaning the walls cannot be too steep without a liner due to erosion and wall stability. Without liner, the slope on the wet side of the pond should be around 27 to 18 degrees. To make it easy to understand, the steepness should be for 1 meter of height, the length of the slope should be 2 to 3 meters. So if your pond is 3 meters deep, the length of the walls to the bottom of the pond should be between 6 and 9 meters long. If your pond is small, the pond can be steeper to around 34 degrees. So for a 3 meter deep pond, the length of the slope would be around 4.5 meters long. It should not be less though. If you have a pond liner, a 45-degree slope is fine. This means for the 3 meter deep pond, the length of the slope will be around 3 meters long. The excavating is fairly straightforward, although it is recommended to use the soil for digging to build up the dikes so you do not need to dig too deep. Also, if you hit a clay vein, then remove it to the side and use it for sealing later. It is very important to compact the bottom, the walls, and the dike of your pond before you add the liner or the clay. Additionally, it is very important to remove all big rocks and other debris. If you are not using a liner, then add the layer of clay to the bottom and sides of your pond and compact it. Make sure the clay isn't too dry so it is easier to form and compact, then add water. To prepare the liner, make sure you have enough to overlap the pond so you can anchor the sides. Then depending on the size of your pond, it might be easier to weld the pieces together and move it into the pond, or lay the pieces in the pond then weld them. Usually the latter is easier to do, but depending on the equipment and space you have, it might have to be the former. Once the line is in place, anchor the sides in the soil so it doesn't move, then start filling the water. Decide where the pond should go. Focus on water sources and water flow. Decide the size and depth of your pond. Decide if the pond will need a pond liner or if you will use clay. Consider the different pond slopes depending on the pond design.